Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Fantasy Fiends podcast. I'm Stevie Collier, and I'm having a bad hair day, and I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin, and we are honored to have, oh, God, I should have asked you how to say this beforehand, Savannah Goins. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, not Savannah, Savannah.
Nope. Mm-hmm.
Like, Savannah is like plains, right? Like, where all the... Yeah, okay, Savannah.
Yeah.
You know, it's pronounced... So I said that right, but apparently I can't pronounce museums, right? Museums. I say museums because it's easy.
It's his French learning influence that's telling him to mispronounce it.
What's ironic is I had the hardest time learning the French word for museums, which is musée. I could never say that properly. That and requin, which is shark, and that just sounds stupid. It's not even close to shark. But today we have a very interesting podcast. So again, so Savannah is a very interesting person because she is actually a dragon wrangler by day and a writer by night, and she has a very cool job, a job that I think a lot of people out there would like to do. And they're in Austin, Texas. We don't have many of these, and that is
exotic veterinary clinics.
Yeah.
So I'm a registered veterinary technician at an exotic animal clinic where we do have dragons. No fire-breathing dragons, but sometimes venomous lizards.
That is so. I always wondered how a veterinarian learned to do operations, and how do they train for these specific animals besides dogs, cats, horses? Is it just trial and error, or are there classes that they had to take?
Well, I'm a vet tech nurse, so I don't actually do surgical procedures like the veterinarians do. I know the veterinarians, in addition to getting 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of vet school, they have to go on to do, I think, 2 years of specialty studies and be a resident at a clinic that practices the kind of specialty they want to learn about. So it takes a whole lot of years of study to be able to work on these different animals.
That's a lot of school.
Mm-hmm.
That is a whole lot of school. I had 5 years of it, and I think that was enough for me. So, man, well, that's really cool. So you get to see all kinds of crazy things come in. So
yeah,
your day-to-day life is like Harry Potter, the magical beasts, and where to find them, basically.
Yeah, something like that.
That's cool. And in my opinion, that would be such a great way to come up with magical beasts, or, skin texture, how they walk, how they move, stuff like that, just by seeing these crazy creatures. So before we begin, we usually start the podcast with, it's evolved from word of the day, but Andy and I never did word of the day, or we'd have to find it like 5 minutes before. So now it's, what's something cool that you did this week? For me, it was very easy. I went to Orlando. I went to the Universal. Rode. I paid way too much money to get the express pass, but God, it's so worth it. Like, there's people waiting in lines for hours, and I get on these rides in 5 minutes. I mean, if you're going to go to Universal, you have to get the express pass, or you just wasted your money. And then got turned at Harry Potter World. I tried every single one of their beers, and they're huge beers. So I don't even remember half the trip. What? So that's what I did. Andy, what about you, man?
This has been a pretty quiet week for me. Just, the usual working my butt off, trying to get books written. Nothing much of note, I think. I mean, I got a haircut, but that's not really exciting. So
that should have been me. I should have been writing. I've taken way too many vacations this summer, and it's a problem. It really is. But I have a family who likes to do nothing but travel. So, but I'm grateful.
It's a good problem to have.
It is a good problem. It is. What about you, Savannah?
So I didn't really do anything interesting this past week, but the week before that, I launched my AuthorTube channels with like writing tips. And then one interesting thing that did happen yesterday was I got to hear the first excerpt of my audiobook of someone that I'm interviewing to be the voice actor for my audiobook. So I really like her voice, and it was really cool to hear that. Last night or this morning, I listened to it for the first time. So that was really cool. Also really weird to hear someone else reading my words, but it was very cool.
Yeah, I remember my first time doing that, and it was so freaking awesome. It's like, it's not as cool as it becoming a movie, I guess, but it's like the thing between it. You know, you're like, oh, well, to
Yeah.
me, I was really stoked about it. That's awesome. So I'm guessing it's a female protagonist then.
It is. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is she English or is she American?
She's actually American. So the story starts out in Tennessee, actually, and goes in. It's a portal fantasy, so it goes into
Okay.
other worlds from portals that start. One of them is in Tennessee.
We haven't had a portal fantasy author on here in a while.
Okay.
So, and I've never read a portal fantasy book. I bet Anna.
Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, Stevie.
Yeah.
Oh, that book's
I know
boring,
you don't
though.
like the Chronicles of Narnia very much.
How do you know I don't?
Because I've watched the show.
Oh, okay. I was like, hey, we have a fan. Yeah.
I've watched most of y'all's shows, but I actually love the Chronicles of Narnia, and that actually was a big inspiration. I didn't actually realize I was writing portal fantasy until my editor described it as a portal fantasy to someone else. I guess that was just what I liked so much that I did it without even realizing it. And I haven't given up yet on looking for like the magic door or something to some other cool place.
That's really cool.
Been a fun idea.
I'm still looking for my lightsaber. I guess that would be my thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So anything embarrassing that I've said on the show, you probably have seen it.
Most of it, yeah.
Oh, great. I was wondering because you were like, oh yeah, he's going to bring up girls on the podcast. And I was like, how does she know? Oh yeah. So if you've seen the podcast, you've seen my, wow, that's that's great. That's great. I'm going to have to open up my own channel, Stevie's Dating Life. Tips from Andy and Stevie, how to get the chick you deserve.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
We are never going to be those douchey people, Stevie.
What you do is you shave everything, but you just have that one patch of fur right here. Not Hitler, but down here below the lip, wear shades indoors.
Is that how you do it?
That's how I do it. I mean, it works every time. I get a nice, good red slap on the face. So today we are not going to be talking about my love life. I know it's a shame, but we are going to be talking about quite the opposite, and that is fantastical beasts, fantasy beasts, right? That's what we're doing today.
Yeah. Fantasy creatures.
Creatures.
When we had your brother A on to talk about it, we sort of spent most of the time on dragons and stuff. He did pretty much say that dragons couldn't really exist because of their structure. Like it didn't work to be able to fly, given the amount of bone density and muscular density that would be required wouldn't exist. So we can say that dragons wouldn't exist. We could figure out sort of the fire breathing side of things.
Yeah.
But the actual dragon itself probably wouldn't exist. So let's get into some other non-dragon creatures. Let's start with centaurs. That's a fun one.
Oh, I can talk about this one. I have a funny story, but I'll let anyone else who wants to take over first because I won't shut up.
I actually haven't studied centaurs very much, so if you want to go ahead and take that one, go for it.
Well, it's not that I studied centaurs. Okay, I can't talk today, but I went to a osteology museum. Museum. God dang it! The one day I have to use that word is today. So it's an osteology museum, and that is the study of bones. I'm guessing study of bones. And I thought this was going to be lame as hell. I don't want to go there. It's $20 for a freaking ticket. I mean, come on. That's a lot of money for a ticket. I had the best time of my life. It was so awesome. They had flesh-eating beetles. I got this. And did you know they actually use flesh-eating beetles on human bones that they want to study?
Yep.
That's, in my opinion, that's almost disrespectful. It's like, oh, we're going to put bugs on your face, when you're dead. It's so, because I grew up extremely hardcore Catholic in these Catholic schools, and the thought of putting beetles on someone's dead face, I was so entertained. I had a blast. But the worst thing I saw, but the coolest thing I saw, they got this skeleton from, they use these skeletons for 12 years and then they get donated, right, to the osteology museum. And they cut this guy in half and put the top half of him on a donkey and made a human centaur, a real centaur. with a donkey. And I was like, and I asked him, I said, did you get this guy's permission to do this? Because now he's resting for eternity as a centaur on top of a donkey. And it was really cool. I mean, I'm not butthurt about it or anything. I'm just shocked that we can do stuff like that. I didn't know that stuff was allowed. But yeah, they had like useful information on centaurs and everything. And it was really cool experience, and to see an actual, if centaurs existed, how they would look, at least their bones.
Well, like for a centaur to exist, let's start off with the basic cardiovascular system. You would need not only the human set of lungs, but there would need to be a horse set of lungs as well, because the human lungs wouldn't have the capacity to power the muscles. And of course, the human heart wouldn't be able to pump enough blood. So the horse would have to basically be literally, half human organs and then half horse organs. But then would the digestive tract be human? Would it eat meat? Would it eat horse food? Because then, you wouldn't get the same amount of proteins that would be required to, horse feed.
Horse feed.
Plants. The amount of protein required to power human muscles, which are very different than horse muscles, and the energy source and stuff like that.
I was thinking about how would the spines connect, because why didn't I take a freaking picture? It's the spine actually made like a slide, and I was like, man, that seems like it'd be extremely painful. The only person there that was similar was the people with the hunchbacks, and you can actually see how it curves, and it's crazy. I thought it was always like a lump of fat there, but no, it's the freaking spine that's curving, and it's normal. We have my mom apparently knows people who have it. So how would the spine work?
You would need some really powerful spinal, like lower human back muscles to keep that torso upright. And then you would also need, they would need to be really strong to connect to the horse's spinal muscles in order to move. So it would basically almost be this grotesque hump almost of musculature required to power both the upper half and its connection to the bottom half.
Sounds horrible. That would be the worst thing. I would not want to be a centaur. I do know how they came about, and that was these people were finding half of the remains of a human with the remains of the horse, because they were horseback riders that would die, and that's where they came up with centaurs. Am I saying that right? Centaurs?
Yeah, centaurs.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Anything you want to add to that, Savannah? We just demythed this.
Yeah, they just made me think of the Chronicles of Narnia again, because that was the first time I saw centaurs, was like in the movies and the books from that when I was a kid.
Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Because I was scared of that scene when I was little.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like in the jungle,
the dark forest.
The dark forest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. What's another fun mythical
Cyclops.
Cyclops,
because I know something cool about it.
Do it.
So the idea of Cyclops came from elephant skulls, because an elephant skull facing this way, so you have this is where the trunk would be. They have a hole right here at the top of their head, and it looks like a giant eyeball. And this looks like the head of a Cyclops. So if you look it up, Cyclops skeleton, it'll show the elephant, but it looks like there was an eyeball there. That's where they got these giants, the giants with the one eye.
Interesting.
So yeah, I got to see a cow. Is that proper? I got to see a cow with the Cyclops disease. There's an actual disease for it, I guess.
Wow.
So it's disgusting. Oh, it's hideous.
Yeah.
Do you write about any of these yet so far, Savannah?
Not either of those.
Okay.
No. One that I really found interesting studying was griffins, actually.
Griffins. Let's talk griffins.
Well, just real quick about the Cyclops. The eye would have terrible depth perception unless it had like specific structures in it, because it's the two human eyes that give really good depth perception when they work together. So you could have, it would still be able to see, it would still be able to function, because the rest of it is humanoid, but it would be like a shitty aim, which is kind of what happened in, Jason and the Argonauts, right? Or was it the Odyssey? I think it might have been the Odyssey.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was the Odyssey.
Yeah. where the Cyclops is trying to throw the stones at him, and well, they put out its eye, but it wouldn't like it would need special structures, cones or whatever in its eye, and I don't even know how it would work to give it any sort of depth perception with just one eye. Anyways,
would you guys think this would make him or her less intelligent or more intelligent because now he has to think more? Or because when I think Cyclops, I think big stupid trolls, kind of like the one in Harry Potter that's stuck in the bathroom. What do you think, Savannah?
I don't think that having just the one eye would necessarily make you more or less intelligent if there was like brain damage involved, or like a brain not being able to develop properly because of some kind of genetic thing that happened.
Yeah.
That could potentially cause it. Also, I think if that ever happened and someone had like a normal intelligence, they might be rejected by their society, and that might make them act differently than everyone else because they were looked down on and mistreated their whole life, potentially, so that might make someone appear to be less intelligent than they were.
I also, that made me think of survival of the fittest. So if you're unintelligent and you're that big, you're already going to have a hard time staying alive. The way my brother put it, because we were talking, the bigger the animal, the harder it is for them to stay alive. And that's why Megalodon went out of stock. Oh my God. Went out of stock. I'm sorry. I did a lot of business stuff with my dad today, and I'm just thinking in the terms of inventory. Yeah, when the Megalodon went out of stock, when it went extinct, it was because it was too large and it was getting out competed by smaller sharks.
And there's not enough food.
Yeah, that too, right?
Which is why dragons, another reason dragons couldn't exist is because they need so much. Unless it was like a magic sustained dragon, a dragon that would just be sustained through eating food, it would just run out of food because it would eat through whatever wild herds was around, and then of course it would eventually eat through the human population, and then all of the other animals and monsters in its world until basically there was nothing left.
We know a lot about this stuff as fantasy authors, and we should. Like, I can't tell you anything about stocks and bonds, but I sure can tell you a lot about them dragons and centaurs. I tell you,
museums.
God dang it! God dang it! Why you're only like this because you've seen my other episodes? You just
I feel like I've known you guys for months because I've been watching your show. Yeah.
That's cool. That's so cool that you've actually seen these episodes. You've actually been part of this journey. I'm so surprised you haven't been on the show earlier.
Well, I mean, I found out about it. I saw you guys post something about it on Facebook several months ago, and then I've been watching it ever since then. So I think this, as far as I knew, this was like the first opening where I could go. So
it's surprising how fast we get booked up. I mean, it's just crazy how... I mean, we made a lot of, we've grown too. So we're at 186 subscribers. I mean, that's just awesome talking about stuff like this. But so the Griffin, is that your favorite mythical creature?
Well, dragons are my very first favorite mythical creature, but Griffins are a close second, I would say. How about you?
The Griffin, so I am Gryffindor. So Griffin,
I am too.
You are. So we're both brave. Andy's Hufflepuff.
I'm either Hufflepuff or Gryffindor. I'm pretty sure. I think I lean a little bit more towards Hufflepuff.
I think I do a little bit more towards Hufflepuff too, but the very first test I took was Gryffindor, so I'm just going to stick with that.
I take it every 2 years along with the Myers-Briggs, and I always come up as Gryffindor. What is it? One of them's like, would you return the wallet or whatever? And my brother's like, no, you keep it. You check it for money first. Check it for money.
Slytherin.
So... it was cool. So I wore like the Gryffindor stuff at Harry Potter Land, and probably embarrassed myself in front of a few parents and kids because I had too many witches brews or whatever they called it, hogshead ales.
Yeah.
So the Griffin, I'm going to think about my favorite mythical creature. So the Griffin is lion, snake,
eagle.
Okay, y'all take over. I don't know anything about griffins.
it's mostly described as a creature with a bird's head and a lion's body, and sometimes a serpent's tail. But I think that's more so the
chimera.
What's the other thing? Yeah, the chimera. I think that's usually what I hear, like the goat and the lion head and the serpent tail. So the griffin, there is a little bit of evidence that there may have actually been griffins at one point in time. Interestingly, I found this really boring looking paper that I read, and I read the whole thing, and it talks about how there actually aren't a whole lot of griffins mentioned in Greek mythology. Like, you hear about centaurs and you hear about minotaurs a lot, and some of them are mentioned by name and they do important things. The only mention, according to this source, of griffins in the actual mythologies is they were sometimes said to pull Apollo's chariot, but it was usually said that horses pulled it. So other than that, according to this source, there were no other mentions of griffins actually in the mythologies. All of the mentions of them were in the like histories by like Pliny the Elder and like all those other like Greek historical people from like way back then. So they were actually supposedly encounters people had with them. And there actually is a dinosaur skeleton that has been called, of course I'm going to forget what it's called now. I'll think of it in a minute, but it has a beak. You've probably seen it before. It's like the Triceratops, but it's called the Protoceratops. That's what it's called. And it actually has a beak. I think that they've shown these in dinosaur movies. It has like the beak, and then instead of having like the like head with the different like angles, it has just a cone kind of shape, just kind of a circular shape on its head. So a lot of griffins that are depicted in artwork have that same shape on their head and then have the beak. So this paper postulated that maybe those skeletons actually weren't like a reptile like dinosaur, but actually were a griffin. So
that is really cool. I know
paper.
I'm writing a book with dinosaurs in it. It's not all dinosaurs, but the world is based in, prehistoric world with the dinosaurs. But my brother really wanted me to do the Protoceratops.
Oh yeah.
And I said no because my biggest fear, and I tell this to Andy, is that I'm not going to be able to explain it properly. Because with the Dark Assassin series, the hardest thing I did was I couldn't say, oh, it looks like a snake. I couldn't do that because there's no snakes in the Dark Assassin series. That was that was a newbie mistake. I'm not doing that again. But I almost put the it's Protoceratops, right?
I guessed how to pronounce it, but I think that's it. Yeah.
I almost had that in the book, but I'm going to stick with Triceratops because everybody knows what that is.
People know what those are. Yeah.
But that's one of his favorite dinosaurs. And you know everything about my life, so obviously it's cool. Andy and I don't know about Andy, but I do. When I talk about myself in the podcast, it's usually real stuff. This is like
usually
I'm very I'm an open book with anyone I meet, and I think it throws people off. Not dating it. This is not dating, but this is my first tangent of the day. I had a girl that was my friend was trying to hook me up with, but I wasn't interested. But she wasn't talking to me, and I was like, "What's wrong with her?" I'm being super nice, very nice, asking a lot of questions, and apparently I came off as not scary. What's another word for scary?
Creepy.
No, not creepy, not creepy. When you're too much energy, you're
like over enthusiastic.
It starts with a C. Where it can be positive or negative. It's you were really, if your presence is really strong and you kind of shy away from it, I don't know, but it was just like I was too much for her. I was too much energy for her.
Overwhelming.
So, kind of like overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up, but I'm gonna let us get back to topic. Savannah, please don't take us off on these tangents anymore.
I'm so sorry. My deepest apologies.
But so the griffin. So you're saying that griffins could have been real?
Maybe. I don't know, but
so you're one of those Sasquatch people.
Do what?
Are you a Sasquatch person? Like, you believe in the Sasquatch?
I am interested in reading about it. I don't think that I don't believe like all the stuff that's out there, but I find it interesting to read about. And I really like looking at what science and what actual evidence there is of something, even though it might not be what people are thinking that it is. I really like seeing what bits of things are true, and how people might have seen something that made them think it was this, and that's like the legend, how the legend started.
That is cool. I don't believe in this ask. Oh my God, there he is! Oh my God! Oh, it's Andy! It's Andy! Oh, everybody run!
That was very predictable, Stevie. I appreciate the effort.
Did you jump? Was I too loud?
No, Stevie.
Okay. I was gonna
I thought you were
apologize.
getting that excited about finding the word you were looking for.
No, it's gonna come to me. I'm gonna be like, 3 o'clock in the morning. My eyes are gonna like go wide. I'm like, oh my God, that was it.
That's how it goes.
I'll find it before the podcast, but there is an interview for anyone that's interested. There's an interview on Alpha, but you have to pay for a subscription. It's like all things geeky, but they interviewed the leading guy on Sasquatches and Yetis, and he talks about the differences. And he's like, I've seen him. I've been up close to him. I've been up close to 2 of them. And they're like, well, aren't you like afraid that people are going to ask you like, how's that true? I don't believe you. He's like, actually, no. I've seen him, and that's all that really matters. And I want to see another one. I thought that was a really cool approach to it, instead of him trying to push the idea of this Sasquatch being real. And he's really just like, no, I saw them, and I'm just here to give some information on them. They're smart creatures. I was like, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a beer with him. And I know Andy's a very big believer in Sasquatches and stuff. Look at his face.
I'm just sitting here and being amused by Stevie.
Per the norm.
I know I have a lot of energy today because I haven't seen Andy in a week. So I sent him an email, and I think the subject was, "I miss your face." My mom saw it, and she's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" So griffins. So we've talked about griffins.
Well, we didn't actually talk about griffins, young man.
Okay, let's talk griffins.
So you know probably better than I, Savannah, the sort of the digestive system, the cardiovascular system of birds versus a feline character or a leonine character, like lions. Could they coexist? Are there enough similarities between their two bodies that they could function together?
So that's a really interesting question. So most birds, all birds that are flighted, which are most birds, they actually have a series of air sacs instead of lungs, and it makes them lighter, and it makes them be able to breathe really well. And they actually don't have a diaphragm, so you have to be really careful when you're handling them so that you don't stop them from being able to fill their air sacs. But I think if you maybe compared it more to like an ostrich or an emu, I don't know a whole lot about their anatomy as much because we don't really see them very often, but I believe they might have lungs a little more similar to ours that might make it more compatible with something like a lion. But I think it would probably be mostly more like a lion. More like something that's larger than it would be like a bird, because the little bit of evidence that there is that they might have existed doesn't show that there were any wing bones. Like if you look at the protoceratops, there's no wing bones found with them. The accounts that mention that they have wings, everything that I found, it just mentioned that they had like kind of puny wings that they kind of like fluffed up to make themselves look bigger, or they could kind of like jump and like glide a little bit with them. Yeah. So kind of fake wings. So potentially they could have been supported by cartilage instead of actual bones, and that's why they weren't found with the skeletons. Potentially. So because of that, and because they supposedly had gigantic bodies, like if you look at a protoceratops skeleton compared to a human skeleton, they're like crazy huge. So probably I would guess that they're especially their respiratory tract and their musculature would probably be more like the bigger lion side of it.
But then you'd have this bird front half, which is super light, and then the leonine back half, which would be super heavy. And so it would just be like this weird back heavy thing, trying to flapping its wings to try to. It would probably be a flightless creature.
Yeah, I think it would have to be.
If it existed, would really give make it clear why it went extinct, because that front half, it's got talons, but it's lacking the dexterity of, say, a panther or a cat, a feline creature. So then it wouldn't be as fast. It would have those powerful lion back paws, but it wouldn't get the speed. So it would just be sort of like this weird mashup animal that wouldn't really be effective at anything. It couldn't fly, it couldn't run, it's kind of useless.
Yeah. Yep. All possibilities.
Yeah. All right. Now, what about elves? That's a fun one. They're not technically creatures, but they are non-humans. So they are humanoids. So we'll talk about them, seeing as we talked about Cyclops. Because, orcs, they're basically just deformed humans that survive on meat. They could basically be cannibals, which would explain them. Goblins could just be a race of humans that have, a form of dwarfism or stunted growth or something like that. But elves are a different thing because they've got this, the long lives. They've got the really thin, almost willowy musculature. Like
willowy. I love that. Willowy.
You have my permission to use that word, Stephen.
I am willowy. Like I have a willowy form.
Stephen,
do y'all hear that? Do y'all hear that?
You are not willowy at all.
I am willowy.
No, you have to be tall. And you have to be very thin to be willowy.
Wait, what? Are you calling me fat?
No, you have muscles.
I have a beautiful figure.
We've all seen your boobs in your Facebook photo.
Hey, thank you. I'm gonna draw nipples on each of my abs now. I'm sorry, Savannah. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Well, you would have heard it anyway, whether or not you're on the podcast.
I'm used to it, so.
Poor people. Listen, I'm sorry. Did y'all hear that barking? Or
I did. I think he was laughing at you.
Oh yeah, he wants to go for the walk.
Yeah.
Right there. That's him. His fat belly.
Yep.
If anyone's fat, it's him.
Mine. I don't know where mine went. I think he's hiding in the living room. He got tired of me ignoring him. No, this is my pit bull.
Your pit bull. So the Dark Assassin series is about a hybrid elf, and my biggest beef with elves are when I tell people, "Oh yeah, right, I wrote a book about an elf." They're like, "You wrote a book about Santa Claus's helper?" So we have two elves, right? We have the small, annoying ones that are ugly, and we have the willowy Rivendell ones, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about the willowy Rivendell ones, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're humans. And what do you guys think about the love interests between human and elves? Is it doable?
Yeah, of course.
So, but like, I mean, if I were an elf, I wouldn't date like a human girl because I don't want to be with her when she's 70.
Well, the interesting thing about humans and immortal creatures is that often immortal creatures will see the differences. You've got your typical ones who prefer their isolation. People who live long lives often tend to isolate themselves because it's easier than dealing with the pain of losing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't think about that.
But then you've got the problem of immortality, which is sort of this laconic existence where there's no real purpose. It's called ennui, I believe, where it's just like there's no real meaning to existence because you've got 1,000 years. So in 1,000 years, okay, I've got a year passes that I don't move out of my treehouse and paint. I'm painting pictures the entire time. Hey, I've got 999 more. Humans, they always say they burn bright and burn out quickly. Like that's one of the most common examples, or one of the common phrases used in fiction or in fantasy, where
I like that
immortal creatures versus humans. So then that bright burning could be very attractive to an elf, someone who has no passion because their life is so long that they've just gotten bored with everything. And so that passion that makes people human would be so appealing to them. And so that there you have that, that love interest.
Yeah. You said something interesting with the ennui, and that's French for boredom. So I think you're right. I think that is the word used for it. It's like boredom, or I think boredom would be the best way to translate that.
I think it's boredom, but like with an emptiness.
Yeah.
A feeling of listlessness, and dissatisfaction arising from a lack of occupation or excitement. So in a boring life of an elf, where basically you play with trees and you get water and you practice magic, there's not really a lot going on because they're isolationists. So everything is about focusing inwardly.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a lot of excitement. So then there would be nothing to drive you forward because, the human challenges, basically everything humans do is out of the fear of death. Ultimately, You can trace everything back to the fear of dying.
And I thought part of it was also sex. Like everything we do is to have more sex.
Sex. A lot of psychologists agree that sex is basically for the purpose of procreation. Like it's hardwired for procreation. Now with the whole sexual enlightenment, we've come to see it as a pleasure. But in our brains, hardwired evolution, we've evolved to know, okay, sex leads to children, which means our species procreates, meaning we don't die out. Ultimately, that's the thing that drives all human behavior, is this fear of death.
Savannah's probably like, why do we got to talk about sex on my podcast? Why? There's plenty of episodes where they don't talk about sex. I don't know why I'm giving you an English accent.
Are there? Yeah, I was going to say
that. I'm just going to start showing up nude to the podcast, I think.
No gracias.
No gracias. No merci. So Savannah, in your books, what's a creature that you've written about?
So the first book in the series is called The Gwythinian, and the Gwythinians it's a kind of dragon I made up, and I made them up when I was 14, so that was quite a while ago. And basically I thought, I love dragons and I love griffins, so I'm going to make a salamander griffin, basically, that's not a dragon. Turns out it's basically a dragon. The only difference really is that I see him in my head with the face shape more like Toothless from the How to Train Your Dragons. So he's got more of a rounded frog-like face in my head than like the elongated, more lizard-like face. So basically they're dragons, just dragons. And then
go on.
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was actually really interested in what you had to say.
Yeah, so they're just dragons, and they can fly, but they can't breathe fire. And he laughs at the protagonist when she asks him if he can breathe fire, because it's a silly myth. And then there's a couple other creatures I came up with also when I was 14, when I first came up with the idea a long time ago. And do you know what sugar gliders are?
Oh, yeah.
Little flying squirrel things. Yeah, so we see a lot of those at work, and I actually think they're all really cute, but pretty much all my coworkers don't like them because they're kind of like evil little devils with giant teeth, and they look really cute, but they're really evil. And
I think I wrote one of those into my book. Yeah.
Good. Well, I love them, even though they're kind of evil. And in the second book, it's called The Crevibanian, and the main character you'll meet in that book is basically a kind of an oversized sugar glider, and he has a great character, and he's hilarious. I can't wait for him to come out into the world. But besides him, I just had a couple of other creatures that I kind of morphed a little bit into my fantasy world.
It's always really funny when you make humans that are like anthropomorphized animals. You know, like you've got the dog character, like the classic dog from Up. You know, squirrel.
Damn it!
You write a human like that, and then it just becomes so much more entertaining because everybody knows these stereotypes. You know, or like the fox. Everyone knows that the fox is clever and quick. You write a human that is fox-like, and you sort of play to those stereotypes, and it really makes for very amusing characters because everyone knows what to expect from a fox or from a dog or for a cat
or a rat too. Like thinking of like slimy and sneaky and untrustable. Even though I actually have 3 pet rats and they're very sweet, but yeah, that is a stereotype.
The thing about rats is they die too soon.
They do.
And it breaks your freaking heart.
Yes,
I don't want any more rats. No more rats because they break my heart every time.
Yeah, mine are a year and a half now. So
I'm
sorry. It's getting close.
Yeah, but at least you give them a good life.
Yeah,
I put
they were
mine
rescues too.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I put mine in the sewer when they got too old. So hoping. No, I'm kidding.
I was gonna say no.
What are those the sewer alligators called?
Sewer gators?
I don't know.
Or crocodiles. Anyways, it's this urban legend of like crocodiles that got dropped in this, flushed down the toilet or something, and they live in the sewers, or either alligators or crocodiles. I don't know which lives where, but
hold on. When I was little, I was always a writer, so I was always writing comics, but I figured out really early that I couldn't draw to save my life. But my mom got me this book. and it was probably one of my favorite books ever. And it was finding monsters in real life. And it was this, basically it showed you where to find these monsters. So there was like an alien, there was a werewolf, and all these crazy monsters, and they had really cool illustrations, and it gave you realistic places where you could find them. So I remember walking through the streets of Chicago, and because we're on a family vacation, with this little book looking for griffins and all the dragons, thinking that they were actually real. And I remember on my couch crying because I didn't find a single damn monster that day. And this is little 6-year-old Stevie, right? And I remember we had to have a family talk because I was really distraught about this. And they had to break it to me that these things weren't real. And this happened twice in my life. That, and whenever I learned that the mask from Jim Carrey wasn't real, that I couldn't buy one.
Yeah.
I was a very creative little boy. So, and to this day, when I watch horror movies or when I read books, these things are very real to me. I get very sentimental with books, and I've had to put books down halfway through because I'm like, I can't do this. A serious note, like when there's a lot of rape scenes, I can't read the book. Or if believe it or not, if the sex scenes are too graphic, I will actually put it down. Yes, Stevie Collier will actually put these books down because it's just too much for even him. So,
for those of you who are listening to the podcast and not watching, Stevie has a very large collection of Danielle Steele novels on the shelf behind him.
I got it all. I also have that dinosaur porn book.
Yeah, exactly. Stevie's not actually writing dinosaur fantasy. He's just calling it fantasy, and it's going to be a different kind of fantasy.
Yeah. What the heck? Where is this podcast gone to? It's spiraling out of control.
We should probably move on quickly before we get into Stevie's dinosaur erotica.
We need one more monster, I think. One more fantasy creature. I'm not satisfied yet.
How about Leviathan?
Yes. Amazing. We can talk about the Bible. Let me talk to you about Jesus.
Well, wouldn't Leviathan be like a Bronchiosaurus or something like that? Like one of those bigger plant-eating?
That's Behemoth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Behemoth is the land dinosaur that's described as having a tail like as big as a cedar tree, and fits the description of something like what you just mentioned. But then the Leviathan is actually a water creature, and there's actually a lot of speculation about what kind of skeletons we found that might have been the Leviathan. And interestingly, if you kind of go through and compare them, the Sarcosuchus, which is the super croc, like the giant crocodile, that has actually been found to be, like, at this point, the most likely creature that might have actually fit that description. It actually has a hollow place at the end of its rostrum, its nose on its skeleton, that it's postulated that it might have had the ability to breathe fire of some kind. Because if you look at the bombardier beetle, it actually has tiny little glands in its abdomen that when it's scared, it mixes these chemicals and shoots them out, and it's like an acid that's at like the boiling temperature of water. So it's kind of like getting hit with fire. So there's a theory that there could have been some kind of organ system like that in the tip of the nose of a Sarcosuchus that could have been able to breathe fire like it's described, which could have maybe been how fire-breathing dragon legends started.
Well, that's actually one thing I was going to say, is that the modern European dragon, or modern, 15, 14, 1300s, evolved from wolves. If you look at the classic depiction of dragons when they first were created in European literature, they looked like wolves. They had fur instead of scales. They were just huge and all of that, and that's why they have the wolvish paws instead of the more serpentine dragons common among China and Japan.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think, like, for example, the griffin. The griffin could have been, like, the person who described the griffin might have only had lion as a frame of reference and eagle as a frame of reference, but then it could have actually been something as ridiculous as like the ostrich. Because if you look at the ostrich's feet, it's kind of got like almost lion-like, paws, and then it's got the weird beak. So, it's interesting to think, all right, like the Cyclops, it was probably just created because, the guy who wrote it saw some dude with one eye because of some genetic malformation and said, that's a freak, that's a monster. Or dragons, based on the Chinese, based on serpents, or based on wolves, or all of these fantasy creatures. They definitely have some sort of origin in real life creatures, maybe some that don't exist today, some that were prehistoric, or that they found the skeletons and they're like, oh shit, what was the thing? But it's kind of an interesting thought experiment to see, okay, which of these animals could actually have existed and which ones couldn't.
Yeah.
I I remember watching this video about people trying to say that dinosaurs weren't real, and they use the Bible as proof, and then they put a chameleon on there, because the chameleon has 3 horns, and they were saying, how could this ever have been a triceratops? Look how small it is. Oh, look it up. It's amazing. Like, it's so cringy. It's hilarious. And I remember I was just at a daycare, and we met this girl, and she was just telling us how dinosaurs weren't real. And I just that the bones were implanted there. That was my favorite part of it, that we went out of our way to put these bones out there. But so again, the difference between the Leviathan and the Behemoth was the Leviathan lives in the water.
Yeah, that's one of the differences.
Okay.
It's also described as having like giant teeth and impenetrable scales and very much a carnivore, whereas the Behemoth is described as more likely to have been a plant eater. So that's another difference. It probably would have been a lot less threatening, other than like getting stampeded, like stepped on by it or something like that. Or it might have been able to like kick you like a horse could, maybe. But the Leviathan is described as being so terrifying that nobody would ever try to capture it or to keep it as a pet or to kill it to eat it or anything like that, because it's unstoppable, basically. It's a really interesting description.
And real quick, what was the dinosaur that you brought up?
The Protoceratops.
No, there was another one that you just talked about.
Besides Leviathan and Behemoth.
I thought you said it was spitting.
Oh, the bombardier beetle.
No.
Oh, the Sarcosuchus.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah.
Was that what is that? Is that a crocodile?
It is. It's called the super
That's
croc.
right.
Yeah.
I had trouble with either that one or Dinosuchus. So I was like, man, that sounds familiar. Yeah. So my brother would have had diarrhea on this show. That's how excited he would have been. Like, he's gonna feel like crap that he wasn't on this show. And I really love that in the chat on YouTube, we are wondering if Stevie should be nude or not. I love how that just. My argument is it would add flavor to the podcast. So anyway, I think we should get to the reading. Yes. But before we do, I would like to ask people watching the chat to help me figure out the damn word I'm looking for. I had a powerful presence, and the girl thought I was intimidating, but in a positive way. And it starts with the C. I wasn't condescending. So maybe someone can help me out there. I can't, not confrontational. I can't freaking think of the word. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the Gwythinian, right? Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you did.
So this is an excerpt from Savannah Goins.
Yeah, Goins.
Goins. Like I'm going to get Savannah. All right. So do you want to give us a little bit of background on this, and then also tell us our parts that you want us to play?
Yeah, so towards the beginning of the book, the main Gwythinian, whose name is Gadian, and the main human, Inzi, they end up meeting up, and they're trying to learn some secrets about their parents in the past, and they're also trying to keep the one, there's several missing stones, and they have one of them, and they're trying to keep that from this other person who may or may not have some of the other stones. So this bad guy is another Gwythinian. He's bigger and older, and he is very gifted at some of their abilities, and he's coming after them. So at the beginning of the scene, they're just realizing that he's caught up to them, and it goes from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what parts would you like us to play? You're the director.
So I strategically picked this section because there's only 2 parts. So you guys get to play the parts, and I can just watch.
Okay.
Because I need to work on my public reading and stuff, but I would love to just listen to you guys do the public reading. So
okay.
So there's Gadian, the male dragon, and Inzi, the female protagonist. So who wants to be which one?
You said there's a female?
Mm-hmm.
I can play the female.
Human. Okay.
Andy's good with the male voices.
Okay.
And then Andy, would you like to do the narration or me?
I'll let you do it this week.
Okay.
The narration is actually, it's in first person. So if you're playing the girl's voice, you're also the narrator.
Oh god.
Boom.
That's gonna be rough.
So you get to do the majority of the reading.
Let's do it. Just finished my shot of whiskey. Oh god. No, I'm kidding. Where am I? Okay. Okay. Got to get into the mode. I eased into the tuned out state brought on by the monotonous beat of my constant footfalls. It was getting late, probably almost time to call it a day. I was so deep in my own thoughts that I ran several paces past Gaydon's halted form before realizing he was no longer in front of me. I whirled around, searching for him. Had I lost him? No, there he was behind me. I hurried back just as the sky started drizzling. What's up, Gaydon? I held out my hand and watched the raindrops splatter on it. I raised my eyes to his, and his expression worried me. That furrowed brow look, plus the stance of his ear flaps. Did he smell that Tucalian-ish scent again? Oh no. What's happening? I barely heard my own whisper, but I knew he could hear me. He stared past me, ear flaps flicking this way and that at top speed, and an instant later his intense gaze was leveled at me, at my soul, more like I stared back, wide-eyed and wondering what the heck he was doing. Then he parted his lips almost imperceptibly and breathed,
Get on.
What? Hadn't he drilled into me the improperness of that? How he'd rather take months on a journey than have me riding on his back? I stared, unsure what to do. Had I misunderstood what he'd said? How would I even get all the way up there? The next thing I knew, I was being flung through the air by the hood of my sweatshirt and thrown backward over his head. I stifled a scream and landed painfully on his back, one leg hanging over his side, the other draped sloppily around one wing shoulder. As the sticks in his satchel bruised my back, my hands flopped around, grasping for a handhold. Finding none, I reached up, flexing my non-existent abs, and grabbed at the wing shoulder under my left leg.
Shut up and hang on to something, and get invisible now!
Then he bolted. I tried to get a firm grip on something, but it was too bouncy. I nearly fell off, holding on for dear life with one leg. He ducked his head and shoulders, pitching my body forward for an instant. I threw my arms around the thick muscles of his neck and held on as tight as I could while he pushed off into the sky and pumped his wings with enough force to carry us into the blackness above. My stomach dropped, and a scream stuck in my throat. I opened my eyes to see nothingness beneath me. He turned invisible, which did not help the stomach situation. I squeezed as hard as I could with my arms and legs, afraid of falling off and plummeting through the air to certain death as I tried to turn invisible myself, but I was too distracted to focus the way I needed to. My stomach pitched again. I gave up on the invisibility and instead placed my focus on not puking. A roar came from behind us. Was that a second set of wing beats? Gaydon's wings attacked the air harder, the muscles of his neck and shoulders ever-changing beneath as I held on. But he didn't roar back. He didn't want a fight. He wanted to stay hidden. Was Tucalian after us? How big was he? I glanced back just as lightning struck the sky. There was no visible Gwithinian there, but the rain pooled and bounced off an invisible form, one much bigger than Gaydon. As Gaydon pumped harder, fighting gravity, I tried to attain invisibility again. There was the crack. Now just to reach it. We swerved in the same moment that I heard a chomp of teeth where Gaydon's tail would be. Must focus the crack. Reach for it. A heavy slapping noise. Had Gaydon whipped our enemy with its tail? And a huge roar from right behind us. Did I dare turn and face whatever it was? The crack in the wall. Almost there. Up and up we soared through wind and rain. I was completely drenched, blinded by the now heavy drops streaming down my face. I was so glad I'd chosen the rain jacket. Focus, focus, almost there. I had it. At that moment, Gaydon drove towards the ground, and I nearly lost it again with the nausea. A few moments later, just as my stomach had almost caught up with us, he twisted and soared upward again. This must be an elusive maneuver. Well, it worked on my stomach. I'll never find that again. Reaching behind me, I fumbled for the satchel. If I could just get a grip on one of the sticks, I could pass it to Gaiden. I finally got a hold of one and pulled it out, but it was too heavy. Another quick change in direction, and I dropped it. Gaiden spiraled down after it, maybe thinking it was me. It went horizontal. As soon as his invisible hand wrapped around it, he bit it and launched it behind us. I waited to hear the remarkery find its mark, or wingbeats getting closer, but the only sound was pouring rain. A minute went by, then two, maybe more. Had the remarkery done its job? Where were we? The invisibility was getting harder to hold. It would soon slip. As he raced through the sky at incredible speeds, I risked lifting my head to search for distant shapes. The biting wind and icy drops flew at my face, making it even harder to see anything that might be hiding itself. I leaned closer to his neck and tried to shield my face with an arm. There was nothing I could do to help with the escape now. The rainwater seeped through my pants and accumulated around the rim of my boots, dripping frigid water down into them. It chilled me all the way down to my toes. I shivered violently, holding even tighter to him, scrunching my eyes closed. I thought I felt him shiver too. Maybe he wasn't quite so impervious to the cold. Then he changed directions again, flying both up and forward at the same time. I felt the tension in the movements of his back muscles. One moment I plunged into the cold, and then the wind was suddenly calm. I waited for it to get loud again, and when it didn't, I opened my eyes. There was the moon. We were above the clouds. As he leveled out, my stomach finally eased its threat to return my last meal. I gazed at the glowing silver orb, shocked by how magnificent and enormous it was from this high up. It was so beautiful. And wow, I was really sitting on the back of a flying dragon. We soared through midair. No, higher than midair. When we slowed, I looked back for signs of a follower. Another flash of lightning revealed that our trail was clear. Could it be harder for him to find us above the clouds? Why were we up here? I tentatively held my arms out to feel the breeze, not yet brave enough to sit up straight in my seat. Flying was the most unbelievable, incredible feeling, but also really high up. I closed my eyes, enjoying the exhilaration and holding on as tight as ever. My mind went back to my life in the real world and how this was exactly what I'd wished for it. I wanted to fly away from it all, and now I was. Although, who knew what exactly I flew to? Who knew exactly what exactly I flew to? But for the moment, at least for this moment, I was free. Despite the cold, despite whatever flew after us, or whatever disasters we may be flying toward, it was like the good music that made my soul feel fresh and whole as I reveled in the melodies around me, flying away on them. With a joyful smile, I realized I had been right about that. Music really was like flying. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was freedom. He flickered back into visibility. We must be safe now. I looked down at his shoulder and saw something other than mud or a scar. The rain washed the mud away, revealing a black mark of some kind. A tattoo? Whatever it is, it must be important if he wants to keep it hidden, which means I should definitely check it out. I placed my hand over it and then slid forward with my whole body, as if I slipped, conveniently smearing away more of the grainy covering. Thin, dark lines sprouted from a central point like an eggshell about to crack open. Weird. My stomach was left somewhere up on the north side of the clouds when Gaiden and I practically free fell into a nosedive. My arms and legs burned with the pain of how tight I gripped to stay on board. The drop was as terrifying as the flight had been exciting. Another scream stuck in my throat. His wings expanded to slow him for a moment. He landed hard. I lurched over his head and hit the ground with a teeth-jarring crash. I stayed still for a few seconds, waiting to see if anything was broken, but no body parts screamed out in me at pain. I rose slowly to my feet.
I think we lost him.
Panting, Gain shook off excessive water, almost like a dog. He stepped toward a group of trees, probably for some cover from the downpour.
I've not sensed his presence for several minutes.
I hurried into the trees with him. Well, that's a relief. And look, you carried me on your back and didn't die. And I'm not over here expecting a proposal or anything, so I let my implication hang, confident he was capable of interpreting it. He cleared his throat.
Yes, well, get some sleep. I will stand guard. and no fire tonight. We do not want to risk attracting attention.
Very nice. That was fun.
Yeah.
I had a lot to say.
Yeah.
My mouth is like dry now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it was really fun. It was really enjoyable. Definitely Portal Fantasy. So does she like him?
Yes.
So she's in love with a dragon. Is it morph like into a human, or she just likes a dragon?
Well, she's falling in love with him as he is, and whether or not he changes, we'll see in the future.
Oh, awesome. Cool. So it might happen. Okay. So they're gonna have little dragon babies. Let's see. Did we figure out captivating? Captivating is not the word. Dang it. I'll find it. I'm telling you, like I said earlier, it's gonna just scream at me in the middle of the night. So Savannah, unfortunately, our time has come to an end. But fortunately, I'm still clothed. So where can we find you?
So I'm mostly on Instagram. That's my favorite social media at author Savannah Goins. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. I also have a website, and the Fantasy Scribe is my blog, and that's where you can see, I did a series earlier this year on fantasy creatures, and that's where you can see a little more detail about some of the things that I talked about, like griffins and Leviathan tonight and some other things. And I also just started a YouTube channel, Savannah J. Goins, where I'm giving writing tips for newer writers. And
awesome.
That's about it.
Very nice. You're all over the freaking place.
Also, my book is on Amazon, The Gwythinian, and it's any place you can find an ebook or a paperback or hardcover. It's in all the places.
Cool. And you also have, you're working on the audiobook too.
I am. I'm working on interviewing voice actors right now.
Very exciting. Yeah. Well, that was my audition. So why are you laughing?
I mean, it was just so beautiful.
It was so beautiful. They play such a beautiful woman. You don't have the hair
and everything, the bangs.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Well, Andy, anything else you want to add?
That's it. You did such a masterful job with this one, Stevie.
So beautiful. I felt like a poet there for a moment. As I struggled through like words that people use every day.
Yeah, I should have told you what the weird words were too. I forgot to mention that. Ramacri are the sticks. One of the things Gwythinians do is they have these special teeth, and they will bite sticks into like a spear shape and then throw them. They can bite them into spears and knives, and those are their weapons. And then Tukailan is the bad dragon that's chasing them.
Oh God. I wrecked both of those words.
Well, I made them up, so I should have warned you about them beforehand.
Well, Savannah, I'd love to have you back on the air. I would like to set something up where you and my brother both come on the air so we can actually.
That'd be great.
Yeah, like you would have a blast with him. We had a really good time last time, and we could, discuss how some of these things could have existed. I know he just studied how Godzilla couldn't have existed, and he was pretty upset with that. Yeah, he thought it was a bunch of bullshit. So I think because he wants Godzilla to exist. That's the thing. So. Yeah. All right. Wow. I mean, we didn't have a podcast last week, so I guess we're gonna have to say goodbye. All right, Andy. Nothing else. We're good.
That's it. We've got the awesome AM Rycroft on next week. We're gonna have an interesting topic that we have not yet decided on, but it's gonna be awesome.
Is it my dating life?
It will not
probably.
Be.
Yeah. Smash that like button if you want to know how my 2 dates go this weekend.
and even if you don't, which you probably don't, hit the like button anyway. Just throw Stevie a bone.
Yeah. Because I was gonna say something nasty, but I didn't. It had
Good job, Stevie.
It had something to do with bones, though.
That like button's all he's got right now.
Yeah, and hit that subscribe button and that bell notification for more Stevie zaniness. Awesome people like Savannah and intelligent people like Steve. No. All right, guys. Well, that's it for another Fantasy Fiends podcast. We love you all. Hope you have a great night, and we will see you next week. Good night.